the button. Come on. Push the button.
What are you doing?
I'm just playing along. Come on, push the button.
Yeah, come on, push your button.
Blow everybody up.
Yeah, blow everybody up.
Push the goddamn button.
Push the goddamn button.
You heard what she said.
The title of this video, what do I keep for spare parts? Here's a little box. I keep my spare parts. First thing I keep is a nice little headlight, because sometimes out in the garage or even in the open light it's really hard to be able to see what you're looking at in motor, especially when you get in the back parts of the motor where light can't get to. But let's see what we have here. The first thing we have, looks like we got some Tygon fuel line. Always handy to have around. Keep about 10-15 feet of that around in case I ever need to change my fuel line. Exhaust gaskets. Pop-off pressure tester. Just use it every year when I rebuild the carb. Speaking of carbs, looks like we've got a spare one here. There's another carb in case one of mine goes bad. I can just replace it with that. Got a cat now that is not part of the kit. It does seem to like things, nor is a salt shaker. I am salty a lot of times, but it has nothing to do with flying. See what do we have here. Looks like we got a bunch of spare gaskets in there, spare parts. Let's see what we got. Okay, you're gonna clean out my place here. Okay, exhaust gasket, head and base gasket. Guess I need to replace. Looks like I've got a carburetor fuel filter screen. Easier to just replace the damn thing than to try to clean it. What else we got here? Bunch of extra screws. Looks like these are long bolts. These are probably prop bolts because I switched between my Helix prop and my E-prop. They require different size bolts. So I have a bunch. You can tell these are actually from China. Either that or someone has really bad rating. Got some screws. This is for the plastic housing that goes around my motor. Those screws tend to vibrate off. So I've lost them. I have a couple spares. Sure, everybody knows what these are. Exhaust springs. They do tend to break after a while. I've had some last 5 years, some last 2 flights. Spare fuel filter. This is a good one. It's 10 micron. Love it. Not too big, not too small. Has great high capacity. I think it was all like $4. Yeah, spark plug cap. Never know when I need to replace those. Sometimes I'll put dates on them if they're made of rubber, so I know, if this thing 5 years from now I may not use it. Rubber does deteriorate. This is plate. Actually, I use this over the top of my prop. When E-props tend to be a little more flimsy, and I noticed that the, for lack of a better term, the prop plate cover that you get with the Polini is probably half this thickness. This is a 1/4 inch, and if you don't use a thick one, it'll actually start to bend when you torque down on the E-prop because the hub tends to give. Spare squeeze bulb. Empty bag for no reason. Exhaust mounts. Those will go at some point. Had them last 6 months. I've had them last 4 years. You never know. A bunch of screws. Part of a motor mount. I have an extra one in case one goes bad. One can never have enough spark plugs. These are all gapped and ready to go. Yeah, a little bit more than I need, I know. Let's see what we got here. It looks like it's a cage. I'm trying to think. A cage bearing. That's the smaller bearing inside the motor. Spare one of those. This nice little guy has a Walbro carb, so you can tell if the height of the metering lever. Gas commander, another air or fuel filter. More screws. Of course, your good old spare piston. Pretty much it. Got a bunch of Loctite, gasket maker. This is the vacuum. This is the pulse port pump. It's not the actual pulse port, obviously. This is just a tube that goes from the engine to your carb. Some engines, you don't need this, but in my Polini, no, Cat, we really don't need you in there. The pulse port gets a pulse from the engine and makes the gas go, through the carburetor. It's really it. I mean, those are the kind of things that I keep and use. Hopefully it's helped and gives you, like, oh, gee, I wish I had that in my box or whatever.